Thank you everyone for joining us, and good afternoon, distinguished attendees. And it gives me great pleasure to welcome you all to the 2022 UWS Entrepreneurship Discussion Series. I am Ibiemi Umihe, a lecturer in enterprise at the university, and this discussion series was established by the university to provide a broader understanding of entrepreneurship by hosting a range of engaging speakers across the industry and academia. So at this point, permit me to introduce Johnny Moe, who is the head of student innovation at the university. So Johnny Moe, who took the post in 2015, joined UWS from Scottish digital agency Brightfire Limited, where he held the post of the Vice President of Business Development. Johnny is vastly experienced in business development and management, and before 2012, he was the Director of Strategic Alliances for FOX in California, which specializes in content authoring software. From 2006 to 2010, he was the Senior Vice President of Boston-based specialist software and services company called Vamosa. As head of business innovation at the university, Johnny takes the lead role in the transformation of UWS into an even more industry-focused university. He sits on a number of boards, and I would welcome Johnny to give us the welcome address. Thank you very much.
Well, Yemi, thank you for that, and what a pleasure it is to join you all this afternoon for this first in what's a really exciting series, and a real indication of something special happening here at UWS around the area of innovation and entrepreneurship. It's my great pleasure to introduce and welcome Alice Thompson as our first keynote speaker in this series. And Alice is the co-founder of Scotland's leading social enterprise, Social Byte, which some of you may know. It's famous, amongst other things, for bringing famous people to Scotland, like George Clooney and Leo DiCaprio, to support their work. Social Byte was founded in 2011, when Alice was just 21, so you might be able to work out how old she is as a result of this disclosure. It's a national cafe chain employing a third of its staff from the homeless community, providing additional support services to those in need, while also distributing over 150,000 items of fresh food to the homeless community throughout the country every year. What a remarkable thing to do. You may also have either heard about or even participated in their Sleep in the Park programme, where over 18,000 people slept out on one freezing cold December night to raise millions of pounds for homelessness, resulting in over 600 permanent homes being created for people who were homeless. Another exciting housing project Social Byte created is the Social Byte Village, which exists in Edinburgh, housing up to 20 people at a time who are transitioning through homelessness and trying to find a permanent home, while with on-site 24/7 support available, which is terrific. Now, in 2020, Social Byte's flying along, doing amazing work, employing over 100 people. Alice decided to fly the nest and move into a new chapter. She retrained as a purpose coach and began working with companies in need of a fresh perspective, as well as other budding social entrepreneurs keen to make a difference, and students who are finishing university and beginning their careers. She holds no less than 3 honorary degrees, as well as an ITV Pride of Britain Award and the RSGS Livingston Medal, which is also held by the likes of Sir David Attenborough. So I can't wait to hear more of Alice's story and to let that story inspire us to think about what it is that we might be able to do as a community here at UWS to make our economy, our society, and our culture better places. So with no further ado, I'm very happy to introduce Alice and to pass the reins over to her. So Alice.
Hello, and thank you for such a lovely, warm welcome. It's so nice to be here and speak to you all today. So I would love to focus on the theme of turning obstacles into opportunities. I'm sure anyone interested in entrepreneurship and business is fully aware that business is full of all sorts of hiccups. And what I would like to do is start by kind of sharing with you the Social Bite story that most people are aware of. Maybe your generation's a little bit younger now, but certainly sort of the 30-year-olds and up will be familiar with Social Bite if you're based in Scotland. So I'd like to share with you our success story. And then I'd like to kind of peel back the curtains a little bit and explain to you how some of that really worked for us behind the scenes, and some of the obstacles that you didn't see or that the general public wouldn't have been aware of, but that were certainly transformative for the Social Bite journey. And my own business journey as well throughout the last 11 or 12 years. So without further ado, let's get cracking. So this is kind of the world that people are used to seeing when they're looking at Social Bite over the last 12 years or so. You can see we've had George Clooney here. We've had Leonardo DiCaprio come and do one of our events. He also opened our restaurant here in Edinburgh. That is Meghan Markle giving me a hug, hugging one of the riffraff for the first time. And her and Harry there in the cafe below. And then on the top right there, you can see me even with Kate Middleton. I never know what their proper titles are. Duchess of Cambridge, of Mrs. this and that. There's something proper in her title, I'm sure there, but I'm not really a formal kind of person. So so we've been kind of put in the limelight a lot because of this incredible celebrity activity we've been able to generate in Scotland, and these incredible people that have come to support our work. And there I am cheesing there as I receive an honorary degree from University of Glasgow. So this is kind of what the world sees. But I would like to go back to the beginning and explain the story from the start. So it really all starts with an events company. And this is one of the events that we ran called the Scottish Business Awards. And this is a photograph here taken of, I think this was the third event that we ran, the third Scottish Business Awards. And this event broke the record for the largest sit-down dinner in Scottish history. I believe there was some kind of a king had a fancy dinner that was holding the record just before. And we were told on the night by the EICC, where we held it, that we had officially broken the record. So this is the largest sit-down dinner in Scottish history, which is pretty cool. So really the Social Bite journey starts here, and so much of Social Bite's success is actually interwoven into the Scottish Business Awards, and I feel like it's the lesser known story, so it's the one that I like to tell. It kind of explains a lot for people that have followed and been aware of what we've done as to how we've done it. So the Scottish Business Awards is an event that Josh and I dreamed. Josh is my co-founder, I should say, at Social Bite. And I basically left university at 19 years old. I did my first 2 years, and then to be quite frank, I was partying too much, learning too little because I wasn't attending tutorials. I was an absolutely awful student. The University of Western Scotland would not have wanted me there as a student. And as a result, I thought I've got to leave university before my parents figure out that I'm going to fail if I try and do third year. I sort of coasted by first and second. So I met Josh when I applied for an internship with this fledgling events company called Capital Events. The website looked very impressive, and I went down for my interview, and then I was really quite kind of confused when I had a 23-year-old chap called Josh interview me, who didn't seem like he particularly knew what he was doing either. And it was kind of a kindred spirits thing of us both kind of starting out in our careers and trying to figure out how to make a success of ourselves. So we decided to work together. Josh took me on as an intern initially. And in my very good luck, within the first month of me being there, I should say this was like a very small operation. The office was sort of the size of a cupboard, and everyone was there in an unpaid basis. Josh didn't have any money yet to be paying people, so he was offering really meaningful internships with loads of experience to people that were willing to take a bit of a gamble, like myself, and maybe because I didn't have any other options at the time. So yeah, we started working together, and within the first month, someone quit who was running one of his events, the ski show, which hadn't actually happened yet, but it was one that they were planning to do. And I was able to then just take the reins and say, look, I can do this. So the ski show was at the SECC. That was the first big event that we ran. But the really fundamental one is the Scottish Business Awards that we were kind of working our way up to over the course of that couple of years that we spent working in the events industry together. And it's really the Scottish Business Awards that led us to creating Social Bytes, because we had decided as our sort of young, idealistic, rebellious selves that it would be pretty cool if we could create a business award ceremony that was like for the elite, that was, you know, like red carpets, celebrities, and was all for charity. So this was because any of you that have started tinkering around with setting up businesses might have come across this already, but certainly something that we realized quite quickly was that once you register a business on Companies House, it's amazing how many of these sort of awards ceremonies get in touch with you saying you've been nominated for an award. And so that would happen to us, and we went to a couple of awards ceremonies. What you start to gather is that actually someone somewhere is running a business where they create an awards ceremony and they nominate businesses, as many as possible, because everyone wants to be patted on the back. So it's quite a good way to say to someone, oh, you're nominated for this award. If you come, you can buy a table. Here's how much the table costs. And that's how you cover your costs for the event and make a bit of money. So we kind of cottoned on to this and thought, wouldn't it be cool if there was an awards ceremony that was like 100% for charity? Nobody's trying to make money out of it. And it was like a proper awards ceremony, like if there was more than 200 people there and if it was kind of a really fancy occasion. And wouldn't it be cool if we could make the point of that awards ceremony about this elite crowd giving back to the people in Scotland and the wider international community who have the least? So this was us just getting really excited about doing something that felt a bit like a maverick move. And this is not a photo of the first business awards ceremony. The first business awards ceremony was half the size of this room. And so it was really this journey that led us to thinking about, right, who could we get as a keynote speaker that even the richest, most elite people in Scotland in the business community would want to come along and see speak? Because obviously, if you're a billionaire, there's not many opportunities that you can't sort of buy for yourself. So we wanted to make this something that would really attract that crowd. So at the time, we happened upon this book called Creating a World Without Poverty by a Nobel Peace Prize winner called Professor Muhammad Yunus. And we really loved all of his concepts. He sort of invented social business in Bangladesh within his own specific eye. And I say that because social enterprise is still sort of quite differently translated depending on who you speak to about what constitutes a social business or a social enterprise. So he really invented it within his own mind's eye in Bangladesh. And he also invented microfinance. So if you're at all aware of microfinance, or if you're involved in any microfinance projects, he invented that. And that's why he won the Nobel Peace Prize. He really turned the economic system on its head and said, actually, people with the least are absolutely worth lending to. And the incredible thing about his microfinance banks in Bangladesh is that they have a 97% repayment rate when they lend to people who have no collateral, the kind of people that Western banks would never dream of lending to. But as a result, he has a repayment rate which is higher than any Western bank could ever dream of having, because of the level of support that's involved within receiving a loan from the Grameen Bank, which is his microfinance bank in Bangladesh. So we were amazed by these ideas of really turning business and the economy on its head to serve people who really need the support to climb the ranks. And we decided, let's get Professor Muhammad Yunus to be the keynote speaker of the Business Awards. This was like the first event we'd ever done. And I should say that we sort of named it the Scottish Business Awards, hoping that people would think that it was the Scottish Business Awards, just because no one had ever named something that before. So I love that. That's something I really have to take my hat off to Josh to. That he's just really great at saying, well, no one else has done that before. Why don't we be the ones that do that? So that was really exciting. And once we got it in our heads that this guy, Muhammad Yunus, was going to be the keynote speaker, it was just a matter of persisting, phoning his offices in Dhaka, the capital city in Bangladesh, being a pest, sending lots of emails, trying to get hold of people. So I don't know if anyone here today has ever tried to make contact with somebody in Bangladesh who's a Nobel Peace Prize winner, but it's not that easy to get sort of any meaningful contact. And we got to a point where we realized that if we didn't just go to Bangladesh to meet with him, we weren't going to get a look in. And we were getting closer and closer to the date that this first awards ceremony was booked, and signed contracts with the EICC for the event to be happening. So getting a little nervous about it and felt like, right, what do we have to do to make this happen? So during one of the conversations to his offices, someone savvy kind of said to us, look, this guy is a Nobel Peace Prize winner. He's got a global calendar that's booked, 2 years in advance. If you, Mr. Nobody, we don't know who you guys are, please stop phoning. If you really want him to meet with you, you have to come here. And here are the 4 days that he happens to be here. And I think it was like really soon. I think it was like within a few weeks of that phone call that we just booked tickets and went. I don't really even remember how we paid for it at the time because we were absolutely skint, for sure. But we made it happen somehow. And so here we were. We went to Bangladesh. We met with Professor Yunus, and it was an incredible experience. But what this led us on to do, you don't go to Bangladesh for a 5-minute meeting. We were there for 5 or 6 days, and this led us to actually traveling around Bangladesh and experiencing some of the projects and businesses and microfinance systems that had been set up in rural Bangladesh. So this was us with a community in rural Bangladesh, and everyone was really excited because white people don't really go to rural areas of Bangladesh that much. So it's always kind of a point of curiosity for the locals, like, what on earth are you doing here? Babies that we met in the towns had never seen a white person before, and we were very scary to them. So that was kind of a very jarring experience. So it was a real culture shock for someone like me who didn't even realize the level of my privilege, having just sort of grown up in the Highlands of Scotland and had quite a nice life and been able to go to university and things. It was a real culture shock being in a completely different culture and community, and ultimately one of the poorest countries in the world. But what was fascinating was seeing how these social businesses and microfinance projects were changing lives. So here is a little photo of one of the social businesses that we visited in Bangladesh. So it's called Grameen Danone. You might know Danone from those adverts where they go, Danone. I love those ads. I like the little jingle. So yeah, Grameen being Muhammad Yunus's sort of umbrella social enterprise company in Bangladesh, which I should say, he doesn't own a single share in any of them. They are owned by the people for the people. But yeah, this is one of his ventures that he partnered with Danone to create yogurts, because a really big problem in Bangladesh is malnourished children. And what they said is, what if we could create a yogurt that was so cheap, it cost like 1 or 2 pence equivalent for a cup, so that maybe even the poorest families could afford them. And if a child ate nothing but a cup of that yogurt every day for 6 months, it would be fortified with all the nutrients missing in a malnourished child, so that within 6 months, that child, if they had nothing else, would be restored to full health. Wouldn't that be a worthwhile business to run? And they had conversations about it, Muhammad Yunus and the leaders at Danone, and Muhammad Yunus kept saying to them, are you sure you understand? I'm telling you there's no profit involved. And they said, yeah, let's do this. And so the idea with this social enterprise is that any profit involved goes back into the social enterprise to help expand it and reach more areas in need. So this was just eye-opening to us, being in Bangladesh. And I should have actually put a little photo in here of us at the factory, but back then phones weren't quite as good as they are now for photographs, so they would have only been blurry anyway. But we went and we visited the factories, and we visited the local communities who were touched by these products, and we were just so excited to think, wow, there's a kind of business that can be run to better the lives of people, and it's different to charity, because when you give money to charity, which is totally, incredible and worthy causes all round, but when you give money to charity, that pound has one life. So you donate money for this meal or for this thing to happen, it gets spent on that thing and then it's gone. And then the charity is back to look for more money and reliant on donations, which if you're a large charity, if you're an Oxfam or a Cancer Research UK or something like that, it's less of a problem and you can plan a little bit for the future and projects you want to run and certain research that you'd like to run. But if you're a smaller organization, it's very difficult for charities to say, right, we're going to invest in this thing, we're going to make these plans next year, and then this is the impact that we seek to have. If you are reliant and sort of tied down by the amount of donations that you're going to get, and you never know how much you're going to get. Social business, as we were discovering it in Bangladesh, was really a way of kind of putting a charity model into a self-propelling engine where it trades to some degree and runs itself and runs off of its own steam. And if it does well, it can expand and do more of that good work. Or that it's a social enterprise that, could be any old business doing anything, but the profits go to another worthy cause to help provide a sustainable income. So this was really just mind-opening to us. And once we had left the Bangladesh, it was very difficult for us to go back to just running events to try and make money. Obviously, the business awards, as I explained, that was always going to be 100% for charity anyway, because this was really part of us trying to do something that felt a little bit rebellious, felt like, kind of feeds the soul a little bit. But certainly our focus hadn't been entirely let's go social until this trip to Bangladesh really changed our mindset and our outlook on life. And we thought, especially 10 years ago, how long ago is it now? 12 years ago about. Back then, social enterprise wasn't as well known as it is now. And it's still kind of misunderstood and people are still a bit confused about what it really means and how they function, because there's no particular legal structure that says this is the way you have to do it. I know that there are CICs and different legal structures that you can set up as a social enterprise. But for example, Social Bite doesn't follow that model. We are a limited company, which is owned by a registered charity, and the two bodies work together to create good work. So yeah, I think that because there's no understanding of it really, especially back then, 10 years or so ago, we thought, wouldn't it be cool if we came back to Scotland and we set up a social enterprise that would park right up on the high street and compete with mainstream business competitors? And instead of it being sort of like a lovely little community project, which are so valuable and so, tremendously important to the communities that they operate in, but wouldn't it be cool if we demonstrated, here's a social enterprise that's national scale, it competes with all of the mainstream competitors you'd expect, and it succeeds. And that was really kind of where Social Bite was born out of. And so without further ado, I'll play this little video so that everyone can kind of be caught up on what Social Bite looks like, and then I'll continue on with our story from there.
Social Bite is a small chain of sandwich and coffee shops. It spans all three major cities in Scotland. 100% of our profits go to different charities that we've chosen. So far, we've raised tens of thousands of pounds for causes in Scotland and overseas.
Social Bite runs a pay-it-forward system,
which means that customers can come in, and as well as getting their own lunch, they can pay something forward for homeless people to come and get later.
Homeless people can come in, collect the ticket and get a free tea, a coffee and a sandwich.
We don't lose any money, but you can do something nice for a homeless person in the community.
The good thing about the pay-it-forward system is that they don't have to go to a church hall or a soup van, so they can kind of feel like members of society and feel like customers. I think the really special thing about Social Bite is that a quarter of our workforce are people that have previously struggled with homelessness themselves. I've been dealt really good cards in life, and I've had so many opportunities that perhaps I've not even been aware of. Guys I come across from a homeless background had terrible cards dealt to them when they came into the world.
My dad used to batter my mum, and he used to hit me as well. And then we took into care when I was 11. A lot of people probably think that most homeless people are on drink or drugs. Some people look through you rather than at you. Didn't feel like a person, I felt like invisible. Since I started working at Social Bite, I've gained bags of confidence. I've got something to look forward to every day, and it just makes me feel like I'm doing something worthwhile.
We realised that putting people in poverty to work and providing resources for people to fund themselves and their families is the way to end the cycle of poverty.
My name's Sonny and I work for Social Bite. I was unemployed and I was trying to get a job, and to be honest, with no job prospects at the time, so I was in and out of prison and taking drugs and stuff. I was just trying to get myself sorted, and when I met Alice, it gave me the chance of having a job, so obviously I grabbed it with both hands and I've still got it.
People in the very worst situations in Scotland have a chance finally to be included in the system.
Now we've expanded and opened a high-end restaurant called Home in partnership with a local restaurant group here in Edinburgh called Maison Bleu. They run it with the same excellent food and service and everything you would expect from a really, really great restaurant. Diners are able to pay something forward.
It's a cruel world. We have to think about other people and try and do something to make things better for them.
Homeless people are invited every Monday to come and sit in the restaurant and have their order taken by the waiters and have their food brought to them. Sort of no queuing, no soup kitchens, no church halls. Feel like human beings and feel like part of society.
I find that they've always been really fair with us, you know what I mean, and service always been nice.
I had the beef stroganoff, and the meat was absolutely perfect, and the mash was nice and creamy, you know. Better than what I could do.
I could never afford to come to a restaurant like this, so for somebody else to pay for it, it's amazing.
I'm Dean Gasavi, founder of Maison Bleu Restaurants and partner with Social Bite, being able to help, making a difference in their life. I think it's not just about feeding the people here on a Monday or a Tuesday. It's about bringing them over here, training them, and making something out of their lives.
All right, my name's Joseph. I work at Social Bite, and my role's like training to do all the cooking to be head chef.
That was me when I was on the street a few years ago, and that's me now in the kitchen.
The whole process is about trying to break that exclusion and create inclusion. So that starts with just inviting them in for free food and culminates in the offer of a job.
We need a different mindset, and we need to have more patience and a little bit more of a proactive nature perhaps towards the poverty that's right here in our country.
If you give homeless people a chance, then they can contribute to society in the same way that anybody else can.
Does it make you feel proud? Because wasn't it for them, I'd probably still be on the street, I think.
They make you have a normal routine and a normal life, and they make you feel like a normal person.
I'll be forever grateful to Alice and Josh for that. With Social Bite, it's totally changed my life for the better.
So that's what Social Bite went on to be, and quite crazy to think that just a few years into opening, this was a photograph taken from just across the street of our first shop when George Clooney came to visit. And obviously the world press followed, and it was just the craziest day. But the story with this shop, for me, although again, this is sort of what the public sees of Social Bite, but for me, the real successes were things that were happening within the cafe. So, the first couple of guys that we had hired who were homeless, they really set the course for us. When we opened the cafe, as I say, our main concern was, let's open a social enterprise that is some kind of an example to the business community in Scotland that says you need to raise your game and do something that's for the wider good here. But homelessness actually wasn't our angle when we first opened. That really happened out of just genuinely, organically getting to know a couple of the homeless guys that were selling the big issue on the street outside. When it was particularly cold, we would take them soups, hot chocolates, and we just kind of struck up a relationship because their pitch was right outside the shop where this crowd can be seen in this photo. And so their names are Pete and Joe, and they were a couple of guys who had really been through it with the system. They were, basically screwed from the second their lives began. They were never going to go on to really have a particularly academically successful, or what society would consider as sort of a typical successful lifestyle, given that they had grown up in the care system and been moved around a lot and had never really had well, certainly never had stable parenting, and actually had really horrendous parenting before they were taken away from their parents and placed into care. But this was really such an education for us, getting to know these guys and eventually inviting them in to come and work for us. And then the light bulb kind of went on, like, oh, this is a way we can give back to the community, is actually hiring these people who clearly don't have access to the mainstream employment community, and help them take on some kind of self-sustaining, sort of dignified living, where they're earning their own money, and it's not, you know, maybe selling a magazine for a couple quid every hour if they're lucky. So so this is the Social Bite shop, just a few years into the founding of it. And what I like to do is kind of explain how we got here. So here's a photo of me with President Bill Clinton. You're welcome. The nice thing about this photo is that I am pulling one of the stupidest faces that you will ever see, and that unfortunately will happen every time that I meet any kind of celebrity, apparently, because I've looked at them all and they're all just bizarre. You just start kind of saying strange things and pulling strange faces for photos. But this kind of comes back to the business awards. You can see kind of just behind us, we've got the what do you call those things? Postery things up for the Scottish Business Awards behind us there. So the way that we got here really starts here. You know, we had the first Business Awards ceremony, and when we came around to doing the second one, we were thinking, right, who do we get this year that's going to also be such a great keynote speaker that the business awards will, that the business community, the sort of elite creme de la creme of the business community in Scotland will want to pay to come and see them speak again. But, you know, again, 100% for charity. And by this point, we've opened Social Bite and we're running the awards alongside the cafes that we're opening and the work that we're doing from Social Bite's cafes around the country. So, or actually, no, I lie. We only had one cafe at this point. So we were starting Social Bite and running the business awards at the same time. And we were coming up to this second event. And we thought, well, hang on a second. What was one of the charity auctions prizes from last year? And Josh had been in touch with the Clinton Foundation and had said to them the first year, what do we have to do to get a prize that we can auction off to this very elite crowd here in Scotland, where it would be maybe like an afternoon with Bill Clinton. And that could be one of the things that we'd auction off. Because again, you're dealing with the richest people in Scotland in here. So if you're going to auction prizes off, it has to be stuff that they couldn't just go out and buy for themselves. So the previous year, the first year, they had said to us, right, well, if you raise this much money and we get half of that from you, I think it was something like about 30 grand. If we can get about 30 grand from you into the charity bank account to do our good work, then, you know, Bill Clinton will give an afternoon of his time to one of these folk that have bought the auction prize. So we had that contact from the last year, and coming up to the second year, we thought, hang on a second, that was a little bit too easy. How much would we have to pay the Clinton Foundation for him just to come here and speak at the business awards? And by this point, we've done 1 year already. We've proven it works. We got the knighted businessmen, you know, the sort of Sir Tom Hunter, Sir Tom Farmer, Brian Souter, all of these kind of very well-renowned within the business community people. And yeah, we thought, you know, how do we go about actually getting him to come? And then we just make the Clinton Foundation one of the beneficiaries of the business awards. And they said, well, that's a lot more money. And we just went for it. And we said, you know what, the whole point is to raise money for charity. They can be one of the main beneficiaries of the event. And this was able to happen. So it's quite mad. So the way we got here with George Clooney is just quite simply that the third year we came around to do the business awards. Now, by this point, I think we've got probably 3 or 4 shops, a couple in Edinburgh and a couple in Glasgow. So Social Bite is a bit bigger than it was before. But we then thought, well, where do you go from President Clinton? It has to be someone really exciting that everybody would be like, that's cool. I want to pay to go and see that. And I don't even really remember. I remember Josh and I kind of actually arguing about it a little bit, because he was wondering, do we go smaller and like take less of a gamble, take less of a risk, or do we go bigger and we get like an A-list celebrity or something? And I remember eventually coming down at being like, just go big or go home. We've done this much already. Like, let's just capitalize on the Bill Clinton thing and get someone sort of equally well known. And so we went for George Clooney. And of course, it's much easier to approach celebrities like that once you can write an email that says, oh, last year we had President Clinton as the speaker. And suddenly you're taken seriously. And like Josh and I, a couple of 20-somethings, making it up as we're going along, and can't quite believe our luck that this happened, and that George Clooney did come to speak at the Business Awards. But as far as the world was concerned, we organized the press to come to the shop, and we said, you know, he's gonna weed into his contract, you know, he'll come to our shop, which has a good cause at its heart, and he'll be there for a certain period of the day, and then later that evening he'll speak at the awards ceremony. So, you know, as far as the world is concerned, George Clooney just sort of heard about Social Bite from LA or wherever he lives, and like flew to Scotland to shed a light on our cause. But it's really just a lot of you know, faking it till you make it and hoping that people will believe in what you're doing. And so this is what I really want people to get from this talk, is that you know, the way that things look from the outside aren't always the way that they actually are from the inside, and that it's all about this is something I really like work with students with at the moment, and certain social startups. Like, the way you represent your brand, the way you represent what you are doing to the world is how you will be perceived. It's kind of just like being a human being, right? Like, however you present to the world, that's how they will perceive you. And it's the same with business. So we really knew that in order to make Social Bite the kind of mainstream competitor that we wanted it to be, to set an example to the business community, to have the social impact that we wanted it to have on a large scale, we had to, you know, be willing to be quite ballsy and do some stuff like this. So that's how George Clooney came to be at the Social Bite shop. And then, of course, it's much easier to get people like Leonardo DiCaprio, who came the following year. And I think after that, we were a bit tired because we had been expanding, you know, the real work of expanding these cafes is very physical, and lots of sort of 16-hour days, lots of restless nights. And eventually we decided to stop doing the awards and focus on Social Bite. And that takes us on to the next stage of Social Bite's life. So yeah, we kind of put down the business awards, and I think Josh gets itchy feet about what the next big thing is that we're going to do. And he ran a CEO sleep in the park. So using the business awards contacts, the next year after the Leo event, he did a sleep in the park that was just for like CEOs of, you know, these big companies throughout Scotland. And that was just using the same contacts that had come to the business awards and saying, right, you come and sleep out at Charlotte Square in Edinburgh, and we'll raise a bunch of cash using your wealthy networks for the homeless community in Scotland that we now seek to serve. And that was really cool. I actually couldn't go that night because this is the reality of running a business, is one of our managers was sick, and one of our biggest catering contracts was having an evening event, and I had to make 400 sandwiches that night. So I didn't go to the CEO sleep out, but we did speak about it after. And I remember just kind of saying, like, with Josh, we were both kind of had, I think, the thing of like, wouldn't it be cooler though if it was just like, again, like really proper, like mainstream event, like Prince's Street Gardens, right in the center of Edinburgh, right below the Edinburgh Castle, thousands of people open to the public, making a statement, rather than kind of this smaller elite crowd thing that we had been doing with the CEO sleep out. So I thought this was way cooler. So yeah, it was sleep in the park. We did speak to the guy who runs Tea in the Park, and he gave us permission to call it Sleep in the Park. And this is some of the awesome photos of the thousands and thousands of people that got sponsored and came and slept out. It reached -7 degrees, I believe, on the first Sleep in the Park year in Edinburgh. These orange bags that you see are survival bags. They're just plastic bags, but they insulate you so that people can survive for the night. And so, yeah, it was a really brutally cold night. I remember, I wonder how many of you were there the second year. I think it wasn't quite, because I know we were in Aberdeen and Aberdeen, Dundee, Edinburgh and Glasgow. So we were in more areas. So maybe you would have been there the second year around. But the first year was the year that it was really, really cold. And I remember being in the sleeping bag with the survival orange blag around me. And I remember every time I rustled, I would hear ice clanging off of the plastic, because every time I stayed still for a certain amount of time, ice would form on the outside. So it gets really, really, really cold in Scotland during the winter months. And while there are shelters and amazing organizations that take in people who are street homeless during those months, there's just really no understanding within the wider public, the general public, that there are certain people who can't stay in those shelters for a myriad of reasons, whether it's that they have an addiction that they're entirely reliant upon and they can't do that in the shelter, whether it's that they have a pet, maybe a dog that they keep and they have a special bond with, that they keep for safety on the streets. They can't go into the shelters at night, and you're not going to leave your dog on the street. So there's so many there's complicated reasons once you dig into it. But this was a really humbling experience for the people that came. And I know that everyone that I spoke to after the event said that they couldn't believe coming home the next morning, how tired, grumpy, cold, generally sort of low resources they were from having such a disturbed night's sleep from just being so cold. And you start to get an understanding of how certain members of the street homeless community could come across in less than charismatic ways and not be able to conduct themselves in an interview, for example, or things like this. So it was really eye-opening as an experience. But crucially, we were able to build the Social Bite Village off the back of the millions of pounds that were raised. This was mentioned in my intro, that we have up to 20 people here at any given time who are transitioning through homelessness. So this isn't really for street homeless people. This is for people who are without a permanent home and are trying to find a permanent home, and without the resources or place to stay, without a support network. This is somewhere that they can live and have access to 24/7 on-site support from Serenians, an amazing charity based here in Edinburgh, who partnered with us to run the village. But separately to this, because these two concepts do get misconstrued a lot, separately to the village, we also were able to implement a new housing policy in partnership with the Scottish Government, where we housed over 600 people in permanent homes of their own. Yeah, it's amazing how once you start doing things on a certain level, like with A-list celebrities or presidents, but once you start doing things like that, it's amazing how like government and press will follow, and suddenly you're a big deal and you can say things like, well, we've discovered something called a housing first policy that's operated nationwide in Finland, and Finland have like a 1% homelessness rating compared to everybody else in Europe because they're using this housing policy. And we think that's something that we should do in Scotland. And it's amazing how once you leverage that kind of support and public persona, you're able to have those conversations with the people that can make those things happen, and to be able to say also, here's a bunch of cash that we raised to put towards it. So no pressure, but we kind of expect this to happen now. And to the Scottish Government's credit, they absolutely did. So this is kind of the lifeline of Social Bite and the incredible experiences that we were able to have, the impact we were able to have, and the hopefully explaining some of the how did we get these celebrities involved stuff as well. But yeah, as was also mentioned in my intro, I decided that it was actually time for me to take on a new chapter, moving into my 30s. I dedicated my 20s to Social Bite, and I spent a decade there, and I could have stayed there for the rest of my life, really. But I felt called to do something different and embark upon a new journey. So I started doing coaching. I retrained, and I've started working with social entrepreneurs that are looking to start their own social enterprises, businesses that care about having a purpose and actually having an impact and want to understand how they can do that in a real tangible way. Working with students and graduates, trying to help them figure out, okay, this is all incredible education and I'm going to have limitless potential to implement my academia in the world, but to what end? Like, what's my purpose? What am I here on the planet to do? And I'm not someone that believes that we all have one purpose and we have to find that purpose and live it. But I think having a purpose, having the conviction to choose something that's important and chase that is going to make everyone's lives so much more meaningful, never mind your own. So these are the people I'm able to work with now and coach and mentor and public speaking events as well. So this is kind of the, wow, look how all of this went, look all these successes version of the story that explains the social bike journey. But let's peel back the curtain a little bit. So I'm moving on to the last slide, where I want to kind of explain really some of the authentic stuff that I think gets so often left out of these business talks. I never finished my university degree. I dropped out. I did kind of let that slip at the beginning. As I did, I thought, oh no, I was meant to say that at the end, whatever. I dropped out of university. I had no money. I had no job. I had no reputation. Yeah, I was in £1,000 of debt by the time I was 23. So I left uni at like 19, started working on the events company with Josh. Incredible experience. I know unpaid internships are certainly like taboo now, but I just really want to say that I'm really glad personally for me that I did that. I really proved to myself a certain work ethic. I really did get myself into lots of debt because of my own terrible mismanagement of money, which I'm infamous for in my family. But yeah, this was something that I'm really proud of, that I soldiered through this. I worked my ass off, got into debt, and then was able to bear with it for just long enough that the business was able to finally start bringing in some money, and I was able to be paid, because for such a long time, Josh and I just didn't pay ourselves anything. We made sure we paid the staff always, and a lot of the time that meant that we couldn't make very much money ourselves. And I was able to eventually pay all that debt back, which felt like an incredible achievement. And actually, I have an amazing credit rating now, which you can't get unless you get into debt at some point, because our system's ridiculous. I'm not a responsible person with money at all, but because I got into loads of debt, they like me. So it's absolute madness to me. Mohammed Yunus, the Nobel Peace Prize winner that I spoke about at the start from Bangladesh, who we wanted to be the first keynote speaker, this sort of, incredibly renowned speaker that would bring the business community to our first event that no one had ever heard of before. We traveled all that way. It was, I think it was about 3 months before the date of the event that we had signed the contract with the EICC for, and sent invitations out to all of these prestigious people. And we got to Bangladesh and he couldn't do it. He said, no, I'm not even in Europe on those dates, so I couldn't do it if I wanted to. He was very lovely, and he said, I'll, come if you do a separate event a couple of weeks later, I'll come and I'll do that. I'm in Europe a couple of weeks later, and he has a project in Glasgow. He said, I'll come and do that with you. So that was very nice. But ultimately he said no. And these are the parts of the stories that often get missed out. Yeah, homelessness becoming our cause. So I want to explain this as well, because I think this is just one of the things. It's so beautiful how if we can just shift our perspective, and that's so much about what coaching is about. And that's why I love coaching, is helping people shift their perspective to see something as an opportunity rather than an obstacle. And actually, I'll go back a step just to the Mohammed Yunus thing. When he said no, obviously we got the no while we were in Bangladesh. And we're like, we have no money. We spent some of our only money coming to this country. And now he's not even able to do that. What are we going to do? We ended up, I don't know if this generation would really know who Bob Geldof is, Sir Bob Geldof, Sir Bob, but we ended up getting him to do the keynote speech instead, and it was incredible. But this really gave us an opportunity to actually see the trip in a completely different light in Bangladesh, and say, no, it's not going to be about we didn't get the speaker. It's going to be about what is the experience that's here in Bangladesh that we're here to learn from. It's all about how you frame something in your mind, and mindset is just such a huge part of the coaching journey that I love so much. So a homeless person wouldn't stop loitering in our cafe and putting business people off. So here we are, we're running our first social enterprise cafe. Homelessness isn't part of our thing yet. We operated for a few months, getting to know the guys I'd mentioned who were homeless on the streets outside. And through that process, they eventually became our cause. But really what happened was one of them wouldn't stop loitering in the cafe because we'd become friendly. But we were really competing with Pret a Manger. That was kind of our direct, we basically just stole their model and thought, let's do this with a social edge and show that it can be done better. And So our target market were like business people in suits at breakfast and lunchtime. It's very fast paced. It needs to be like brilliant service and done very quickly. Bearing in mind that we weren't just any old cafe, we wanted to open several cafes and make quite a splash. So the service just had to be amazing. We had to hold on to every customer. We had so little money at the start that like every single person meant so much to us. So when a homeless person that you become quite friendly with is loitering in the cafe, it becomes problematic when they're sort of, down at the end of the cafe, like, all right, Paul, can I get another coffee? Would that be all right? And you're like, yes. Oh, sorry, what were you saying? You wanted this, and you're trying to serve people at the same time. So I remember we were kind of putting our heads together a bit, like, what are we going to do? How do we deal with this? We don't want to be the people that are like, sorry, you're homeless, and like the brutal honest truth is you're a bit stinky, and we maybe can't have that like in the business environment. We were like, hang on. Social enterprise. This is about giving to the community, not about removing people from shops and saying you can't be here. So it was a few days in that we thought, like, why don't we just give him a job? Like, if he wants to be in the cafe all the time, doesn't it make sense that he works in the kitchen then, and we bring him in and he can do the dishes or something, rather than being outside selling the big issue? So even like, if we hadn't done that, if we had just done what most other businesses would do, if we go, oh God, I can't get rid of this guy, he's a bit loud, he's a bit sort of like, his social skills are a bit wacky, he's a bit smelly even, like it's really, how are we going to deal with that? Most people would like, sorry, you've got to leave. But because we were able to go, hang on, let's change our perspective on this whole thing. Like maybe this obstacle could be a massive opportunity to give someone a chance and to do something good for the world. That was where it started. And then that was Pete. And Pete said after a few weeks, he had to take some time off to go to hospital, bless him. And he said, I really don't want to lose the wage. Could my brother, who's also homeless, take my normal shifts, and then we can kind of share the money a little bit that way. And we were like, oh yeah, of course. So then we meet Joe, and then it's Pete and Joe. And you can't, once Pete comes back, you can't then get rid of Joe again. So we've got these two guys here now. And it was through that organic process that we eventually started to realize, like, oh, we should just do this. This is something we should just do in every cafe. And it should be like at least a quarter of our staff. Like that should be a pledge we make. Now it's a third of our staff, or Social Bite staff. It's incredible. So that right there was what is typically seen as an obstacle, but can completely be shifted into being an opportunity if we're willing to see things a bit differently, maybe think about how this could be an opportunity to do something good. The charity community hated our village idea and called us out in the press. I remember being so nervous about that. And like, I think Josh was always pretty chill. I think he was always kind of like, no, like I know that we're doing the right thing, but I'm very socially anxious, I suppose you could say. Like I'm quite happy being social, but I can get quite nervous about what other people will think and things. So I would get in my head about it. I think it was The Guardian ran an article with like, I won't name the charities, but with certain charities basically saying like, if you knew anything about homelessness, you wouldn't put a bunch of homeless people that are vulnerable in a village on their own on the outskirts of Edinburgh and think that that's going to help them. Like it's all about integration. These people need to be integrated into society, not further removed and left with each other. So yeah, that was an interesting experience of thinking, oh Christ, maybe this idea, because we'd sort of said out loud in the press and in the general public arena, social media stuff, we're going to build a village, we're going to do sleep in the park, and we're going to build a village for the homeless community. So what this did is this made us go, hang on, okay, let's check ourselves. Then if that's the case, if that's what the charity community thinks, let's go get some proper research. Let's fund a research study. So Harriet Watt carried out a research study for us, looking into how you can eradicate core homelessness. I think that's literally what it's called, how to eradicate core homelessness in Scotland's 4 largest cities. That's what the study was called, the first one that we funded. And the cool thing about social enterprise is because the profits aren't yours, there's no sort of, oh, do we want to spend money on that? It was like, no, that's a really good thing to do. Let's do that. So Harriet Watt gave us back this huge study. And what came out of it was a bunch of really interesting information. And one of the things was that, yes, actually a supportive community with on-site support 24/7 can be very can be very healing and productive for people who are struggling with homelessness or transitioning through housing. But that's typically better for people who are dealing with a temporary housing accommodation situation, maybe, rather than people who are street homeless and have sometimes more complex needs. So what that did is it made us go, oh, okay, that's what the village should do then. Well, we've got a bit of knowledge now behind what we're doing, rather than just being kind of cowboys. So the charity community were right. We were just kind of, making these bold statements. And this made us really have to go back and think about it. Instead of going, oh, sort the charity community, they don't get it. Like, we're cool young people, we're doing celebrities and raising loads of money and we're going to do it our way. We just kind of went, hang on, like, there's a different way to look at this situation. Let's check ourselves and figure out what the best thing to do is then. Let's try and be a little bit humble with this. And one of the amazing things, I think definitely the most interesting thing for me that came back from that study was this concept of housing first, this policy that they operate in Finland. And if I had 5 hours, I would sit here and explain it all to you, and the wonders of how it operates in society and actually saves taxpayers money. And it's just a far kinder and more productive way to deal with homelessness. But I don't have time. So I'll just say that it's a housing policy that has an incredible success rate. I think it's got about a 97% success rate in reducing homelessness in many places. And this made us go, oh, the village, yes, within this context. And actually those who are street homeless, this works better for them. Let's do that. And that is the 600 houses program that I showed a picture of just before. So yeah, that was really an opportunity waiting for us, depending on the way that you're willing to look at that situation. And then, you can look back at these photos of me and be like, oh, she's such a successful businesswoman and she's had these successes and then gone on to do these cool things and have her own career now. That's the way it looks from the outside. But the truth of the matter is, I left Social Bite because I didn't really feel like I knew who I was anymore. That's a very complex thing for me to explain, and I'm still in the midst of it, to be quite honest. So I've been trying to figure out, how do I, as a public speaker, Social Bite is what I'm known for. Coaching is what I'm doing now. I believe in the power of coaching to, change perspectives and shift mindsets and empower people. But how do I kind of connect those two dots for the general public? How do I make it make sense to the world in a way that means something? And yeah, it's very much been a case of, didn't feel like myself towards the end of my time at Social Bite. I think I was so invested in what was going on all the time that it was very difficult for me to separate my own mental health from this huge web of work and over 100 employees and the responsibilities and the sort of quite philosophical discussions that were going on at the time. I was finding it very difficult for me to create any space and time in my life for me. So I left thinking that'll solve it. I'll start a new career and I'll do something different. And what I found is that actually I've now got a whole piece to think about, which is around, well, actually, who the hell am I if I'm not Social Bite? Like that in my adult life, that's what I've been for 10 years. How do I represent myself in public now? And trying to really figure out what's important to me and how I tell that story. And actually, the reason I'm able to even bring this authenticity to the talk today is because I had my own coaching session last week with an incredible coach who said to me, what if you were just honest about the fact that you're going through an identity crisis of like, who even am I? Like, who is the real me? Because how many people can relate to that? And so here I am for the first time being like really honest about that. It looks great from the outside, I get that, but on the inside, just all of the same human struggles. And I think it's an opportunity for me to be authentic and honest about that, and maybe reach some of you in a more personal way than I would have done if I tried to make it seem like I had it figured out already. So I lied before, that wasn't my last slide, this is my last slide. The biggest obstacle of all, I know I'm over time, I'm sorry, but I'm just going to finish with this sentiment. So I mentioned Joe was one of the first 2 guys that were homeless that we hired. And I got quite close to Joe because I actually invited him and his brother to come and live with me for about 9 months, I reckon. And I got closer to them and their world than I would have ever done just working with them. And Joe explained to me very kindly, and very patiently what his upbringing had been like, and that he'd, basically been locked in cupboards from a young age, and basically at the age of 5 was found and put in care. and that his life had just basically been very unfair. And that all started with his dad, who was basically very abusive, and didn't sort of shower them with any sort of love or compassion. So Joe and I were living and working together for some time, and we got close enough that I eventually started to ask him, why would you keep in contact with your dad? Because as an adult, Joe's father found them on Facebook and reached out to both him and Pete. And Joe really tolerates his dad and like maintains contact, even though he's still not like, he's not a warm guy. They don't have like an affectionate relationship. His father doesn't do anything for him in any way. There's no sort of making up for lost time or anything like that, as you might imagine it. It's still just a very complex situation. And I would say to Joe, if that was me, I would be like, get lost, get out of my life. Like, you screwed everything up from the beginning. You've never even given me a chance to have a decent life. Like, you've basically done this to me. You've put me in a position where I've been thrown around the care system, spent time in prison, unemployable, living under a bridge. It's your fault. I don't want anything to do with you. That would be how I would deal with that. So why on earth do you tolerate your father? And this is where Joe taught me one of the biggest lessons of all in how you can turn an obstacle into an opportunity to see things differently and operate with compassion and raise yourself to a different level. So Joe said to me, well, actually, my dad's father did the same thing to him too, teaching him how to fight, teaching him how to punch, locking him in cupboards. So my dad didn't know any different. And I was just like absolutely amazed by that. Like, for this man who was a 5-year-old boy at one point, who was abused by this person, to have that level of empathy and compassion for somebody who probably didn't deserve it. I just thought that was amazing. And he not only taught me that his father, it probably isn't the straightforward monster that I had painted him out to be, and that he had his own complex needs and issues, and that he had been a victim in his own right when he was a boy. But it just made me live in complete awe of people like Joe, who were deciding to try and break the chain, and to really take on an obstacle as an opportunity to be a better person. And so I think that if Joe can overcome that obstacle in his life, then we can all overcome ours, and create businesses that do amazing things and be the best versions of ourselves possible. So that is where I would like to end the talk today. Thank you very much for listening. Oh no, Yemi, we can't hear you. We're waiting for your mic to come on. Don't worry, it's happening. Someone clever behind the scenes is fixing it.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing your inspiring story. I would say that the video really resonated with me because it demonstrates how the seemingly little things can make huge differences. And for me, giving people back their dignity by just treating them like human beings, oh my God, is something definitely I'll be looking towards contributing to. Thank you so much, Alice. Thank you. So I'm delighted to be hosting the Q&A session. So at this point, I would invite all our attendees online to type in your questions. However, I will kickstart with the first question. So Alice, how did you and Josh start? Did SocialBite find you, or you found SocialBite?
Yeah, oh, wow, that's like a philosophical question as well, isn't it? I think SocialBite probably found us. Yeah, that's strange. I've never thought about it like that. Kind of reminds me of, like, you hear sometimes, like, I'm not a great, musician or artist, but you hear like people that are sometimes talking about, like, it wasn't really me, but it kind of came through me.
Yes.
And I feel like SocialBite was like that for us. It was like the next step always just kind of seemed obvious. It was like, well, we got to give this person a job then. That's the only thing to do. And well, like, we should get George Clooney because we had President Clinton, and I think their charities are kind of similar. And yeah, so I think it was one of those things that kind of tumbled out of us. But I really believe that if we're able to find our purpose and step in line with that and live with a certain level of truth and authenticity, and good intentions, and being able to remove ourselves from the, ironically, I'll say kind of removing ourselves from the limelight as I'm here as the keynote speaker. But I do think that when you make it about something else that means something, sometimes the path just kind of unravels in front of you. I think that's what happened with Social Bite.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Okay. Interestingly, we have a question from the audience now. So I'll take this question before I ask you my second question. So they want to know, what was the most important risk you took and why?
I think it was the George Clooney thing, because it just put us on the map. Like, yeah. And that is a risk because, you know, to do that stuff, you have to sign a contract with the EICC or the SECC or whatever conference center it is you want to do. You've got to sign a contract for like 80 grand or something and just be like, I don't have any of that money, but I'll just figure it out. Like, you have to book the venue to be able to make the invitations, to invite the people and sell the tables.
Yeah.
You have to start by taking a massive risk. Then you have to think, how long are we going to chase George Clooney for before we go, right, we have to find another speaker? So I remember that, like, you know, the ups and downs of even just one part of the story I told, like we don't know if it's going to happen. Like, they've said maybe, but then we've been trying to get hold of them and they never email back. Because, you know, it's like, it's George Clooney's team. Like, they're not, like, they're busy and we're not their top priority. So those were risks, and those were things that I remember Josh being kind of like, but do we just get someone like Chris Hoy? You know, Sir Chris Hoy, who's a famous cyclist. I really should know what medal he won, but he won lots of medals. He's knighted. So there was an option at one point, like, do we just get Sir Chris Hoy because we know him? He's a big fan of ours. He's easy. He could be the keynote speaker, and the event wouldn't be quite such a, but it would be an event that was worth coming to. And I'm sure like lots of motivational like input from Chris Hoy. But I remember kind of saying to Josh, and I know he got on board and he was really there already, but I think I was the one that really pushed and said, like, you can't have President Bill Clinton. I feel really bad saying this because I love Chris Hoy, but you can't have President Bill Clinton and then go Chris Hoy. Like, we're on a trajectory here. Let's just take a risk. Let's just book that big venue again with the big room. Let's, you know, find out how much George Clooney's charity would require to be donated in order for him to come and speak. And I think that was the biggest risk we took, with the biggest payoff. Or actually, and then actually there's a completely opposite end of the spectrum where you could say the biggest risk we took was actually hiring the homeless community and sticking to it. Because like within that as well, like, it's not plain sailing. You're dealing with people with complex issues for very relevant reasons. You know, the reasons that these people have complex issues entirely make sense. They are not to be blamed for this kind of thing. But as part of that, we had hired someone who was stealing from us. You know, sometimes like the daily takings would disappear. And at the time, like £900 in the till was like, we could not go without that money. Like, we did not have reserve, like we didn't, that was right when we were beginning, that affected our payroll, and it was happening, you know, regularly, like 20 quid here, 50 quid there, and then a whole day's worth of takings. And eventually we did find out who it was, and he was honest about it, and we were able to then go, right, now we know this is an issue. And it turned out he had a gambling addiction that he had never spoken to anyone about. And this was part of why he was in the situation that he was homeless. Because any money he got was going to be gambled away. So I think actually taking a risk on hiring people like that and then sticking with them. We didn't fire him. Like, we worked with him. We got therapy. We got counseling. We tried to create a space where he could thrive rather than being rejected again by society. I think those were some of the biggest risks on sort of two totally opposite ends of the spectrum.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much. So we have another question for you, which states that they want to know from the audience, they want to know, how did you respond to the negative article in the press?
Like this.
And what did you do?
Yeah. What we did, yeah. What did we do? I mean, other than me just being an anxious mess, like, do you think they're mad at us? Do you think that everyone's going to hate us now? Other than that, we we went to Heriot Watt Uni because I think they are sort of the housing specialist, or they have people there who have housing background in terms of research and academia. So yeah, we went to Heriot Watt and said, apparently this isn't a good idea. We think it's a good idea, but could you do some research and find out, like, if, you know, look globally, look internationally, see what, you know, someone somewhere, some country somewhere must have ended homelessness. What would we do if we were going to try and end homelessness in Scotland? And yeah, that research study came back and said, well, actually the village is a perfectly good idea as long as you run it sort of like this. So that gave us lots of insight.
Okay.
But it also said, actually, this housing policy is revolutionary, and yeah, it's operated in pockets all around the world. And actually, I'm really proud of the fact that Scotland's model with the 600 homes that I've mentioned, with the Housing First policy that we've put in place here in Scotland, is one of the, I think it is the largest Housing First program that's run in the UK. But there are other ones, and so they do it in pockets. But the problem is that society and government isn't set up to just run like that, and I think that's probably down to like housing shortages and things. But if we were able to invest in social housing and run it with a Housing First policy, I totally believe that homelessness would, within about 20 years, you could wipe it out. Finland used to have similar levels of homelessness to Scotland, and by implementing this housing policy, they took about 20 years to reach what they call functional zero. And that is because we have an understanding that homelessness will always exist to some degree in society. As long as people have relationships, and as long as relationships break down and people have complex issues, you cannot totally wipe out the idea that someone's going to become homeless. But the idea is that no one should stay homeless for more than a few weeks. Like, there should be a system in place that catches that person, provides the housing for them and the support that's required to get them up on their feet to whatever degree is possible for them. So functional zero is sort of where you're like, yeah, there's a few homeless people here or there, but they're either homeless by choice, which is actually a thing that can exist sometimes, or they're homeless for a short period of time while we're rushing them into housing and getting things organized administratively. So Finland now have what we call functional zero, and Scotland could get there if we had the funding and the housing and all of the things in place. So we would not have come across this incredible housing policy and been able to do this huge program with 600 homes unless we had that article happen and responded by going and getting the research that gave us the information we needed to do that. And that became what Sleep in the Park was about.
You're validating the notion that every publicity works out in your favor some way, somehow.
Yes, absolutely. So I just had to sort of shake in my boots. Josh was like, I know what we're doing. It's fine. Like, okay, it's going to be all right. Yeah.
Wow. But further along those lines, are you looking to expand the housing initiative? And would individuals be able to contribute, or it will only be organizations and other charities?
Oh, cool. So first of all, I should say I'm not at Social Bite anymore, but of course I keep tabs, and actually my partner still works there full time. So I get to hear all about it still. So Social Bite are absolutely planning on doing another village. The village in Edinburgh, actually, like, the lease runs out soon. Edinburgh Council gave it for 5 years, the space that it's in. And unfortunately, the world is run by money, so they are needing that space back, because how can you justify housing 20 people when you could be housing 200 people in a block on that land? So the lease will run out there soon. But the cool thing about these tiny houses is not only are they these beautiful, dignified environments that are small and economical, but beautiful, but they also can go, like, you can basically put what do you call it, like not a forklift, but sort of like a forklift. Yeah, and then you can, like, drive them around and park them, put them down somewhere else, and just to connect them to the plumbing and stuff, sort of like a fancy caravan.
Mobile and compact.
Yeah, exactly. So that will be moving soon. Not sure where to. I don't think anyone knows where to yet, but it will be moving maybe in like a couple of years' time. And they are also raising money at the moment to build another village. They want to do it in Glasgow, Dundee, London. They're opening a store in London, and planning to open a village in London as well. So yeah, like, Social Bite shows no sign of stopping. It's awesome.
Fantastic. And this ties into the next question from another participant online. They want to know that, do you find it a challenge to satisfy the social objectives of the business with the need to generate income? How do you balance that?
Yes. Yeah, it's a great question. This is the whole thing that's sort of always being like discussed in the boardroom over the last 10 years. When I was there, was like, how do you weigh up social impact against income or your expenses? Because at some point, right, to create more social impact, you have to invest in it. So like, for example, to do Sleep in the Park, someone has to sign a contract again for like tens of thousands of pounds to Edinburgh City Council to rent that space out. And then you've got to like, you know, pay the artists that are going to come and perform. If you don't pay people like Liam Gallagher or Deacon Blue or some of these people that came the first year, if you don't pay people like that, no one else is going to come. Like it has to be enough of a thing. So to decide to make those investments, like the amount of debate that goes on in the boardroom about, well, that is money from the charity pocket. How do we know that this is going to be worth our while? That is a huge risk to spend charity money on something like that. We were really lucky that, you know, well, we weren't just lucky. The team worked their asses off. I mean, my partner is the sort of growth manager for Social Bite. So whenever there's a project that, you know, like Sleep in the Park or the Village or things like that, he gets put in charge of them. And I know firsthand from being in the office with him and watching the way that he worked, that was like, you know, those people that are running these things at Social Bite, like they don't sleep sometimes. My partner would come home at 3 a.m. and leave at 6 a.m. because there was so much done. So yeah, through sheer hard work, they were able to make Sleep in the Park. We were able, I was involved, to make Sleep in the Park a success and raise £4 million and then invest that in the 600 Homes program and the Village. But there's, you know, to do that is risky because you may very well not pull off a good event. And if no one comes, you just spent a bunch of charity money on a failure. And that is a gamble, and it's
quite risky.
Very risky, very challenging, and it is difficult to know when to make that investment. And Social Bite have gotten on okay with that, you know, over the years, thanks to board members that come and help us manage risks and things. But I think like mainly down to the team, I have to say, and the relentlessness of Social Bite's sense of justice. So yeah, it is hard to weigh up social impact and investment and income, and when is it okay to take money out of the pot to spend on something in the hopes that it will generate more impact. That is the nature of social enterprise. I don't believe that there's a right answer. I think it has to be open to debate in whatever boardroom you're in.
I agree. Achieving a very delicate balance. All right. Thank you very much, Alice. So before we go to the general panel, right, we'll just be asking you one final question. So right now at the UWS, the enterprise team and the innovation team, they've actually introduced a number of initiatives such as the student-led business society, the incubators to support students along their entrepreneurial journey. So I'd just like to know, what key aspects of a university's journey do you feel encourages social enterprise specifically?
Wow. So I don't want to like mention a competitor, but I kind of have to answer this question. So University of Edinburgh, they have hired me to coach their business school students. So that is part of where I'm able to really, you know, work with people about what's your purpose going to be, what's the issue you care about, where would you like to have an impact in the world, and then work with them very specifically to like help them with social enterprise. Or, you know, and I also have the students that come to me and they want to do grad schemes and things, and we work on how they're going to do all of that in a way that protects their well-being, but also to what end? That's the question I always think is important to ask. So there's, you know, coaching programs and things that could be put in place, teaching students how to coach one another. I would say that's a really powerful way of doing it. Group coaching sessions. I really, really believe in coaching because it invites people to work it out for themselves, but it gives them a structure to, you know, it gives people certain questions in which to think about that will lead them to a place of productivity. So social enterprise specifically, I would start with creating a culture of social enterprise within the university. So like one of my clients is Wellbeings Coffee, and they sell coffee. They are opening a cafe at Heriot Watt University, and all of the money that's raised by the cafe existing will get plowed straight back into the university to fund mental health support for the students. So I think making it a thing where like don't have Costa, don't have Starbucks, like get a student or a graduate's social enterprise in there to do something good. So I think once you have that kind of cultural social enterprise within the university, I think that will inspire action as well. But I would definitely say coaching, because I'm biased because I'm a coach, but I think it's very powerful at shifting perspectives. And that's what social enterprise success is really about. How do we shift a mindset here?
Oh, wow. Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for addressing all those very complex questions. Thank you.
Mary. Thank you.
So we'll be moving to the general panel now, and I'll be doing some brief introductions. So on the panel, we have Johnny Moore, who we've already met. We have Dr. Alan Murray, and we have Frank Gumley, right? So Alan has extensive industry experience in the field of enterprise. And prior to coming to UWS, he was a business advisor for the leading enterprise agency in Scotland, Business Gateway. In his role, he has delivered enterprise training and advisory support to over 1,000 businesses from across all sectors. Interestingly, Alan is an experienced entrepreneur in his own right as well, having run his own adventure recreation business for the past 20 years. And I would also be introducing Frank. And Frank, a very interesting person. He founded Forever Great in 2017 with a vision of supporting others to achieve their objectives through creative marketing and business development activity. With a very versatile cross-sector skill, Frank has worked with the business industry for 20 years, from retail to education to economic development. Frank has supported various organizations over the years, developing their visions and helping shape their individual journeys. While in business management, he's currently the president of Aisha Chamber of Commerce, and is also a vocalist. So that's why I said he's quite an interesting person. Welcome, everyone. And we have so many questions, and hopefully we'll be able to address as many as we can. So the first question is actually for Johnny Moore here. And the question is, what programs have you experienced that you think can really open up student innovation?
Oh, right. That's a good one. I want to pick up on something Alice said, because it chimes very much with my thoughts on this. You mentioned, Alice, that perhaps looking for opportunities for peer-to-peer coaching and mentoring. I think there's a huge power in enabling our students to be able to work with each other rather than being directed by by people like me. Any program that we work on and develop is designed in order for us to put our amazing students together and then step out of the way to let them do the great things that they want to do and can do. And there's quite a few of them. I wouldn't claim that at UWS we've got everything that we could possibly need. In fact, far from it. But we've got some quite exciting ones. There's one that I think is notable. We work with an organisation founded in Finland called Demola, DEMOLA. Go have a look at them if you have the opportunity, because they believe that, as we do, that students are not intern fodder for organisations where they have to be shaped in some way by the organisation that they go and work for nearly nothing for in order to be ready to make a contribution. They believe that students are authentic, creative, smart, and have a contribution to make in solving the world's biggest problems right now. And they've got mechanisms to help them do it. And we work with them a little bit, and we don't do enough yet with them. But those things that we have done with Demola have really had an extraordinary impact on the students that have participated, because they put them together with students from all over the world. There's an engineering chap that spoke to me recently from UWS, who was in a team with someone from Argentina, Nepal, and South Africa, and they were given some major challenge to wrestle with, and he was absolutely blown away by the opportunity to be with other international students and think together and solve problems together. So yeah, anything that we can do to help put our amazing students together and help them address the challenges that they can see and face is something that will get my vote and support.
Thank you very much, Johnny. And we have quite a number of questions. We might need to share your email addresses so that people can reach out to you after the session. But we have one here for Frank. And the person would like to know, how can business and academia work more collaboratively to provide solutions to personal development, coaching, and understanding purpose?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, thank you, Yenny, for inviting me along to this. It's great to be involved. And Alice, thank you for sharing the behind the scenes of Social Bite and your journey with them. Very, very inspiring. In terms of your question, Yenny, the question that came from someone that's watching, for me, I've spoken about this often around the bond that academia and business should have and need to have and do more. And again, I'll do something similar to Johnny did, was mention a point or pick up a point from Alice. Alice mentioned another university that she's doing some work with, who obviously see something that Alice appreciate her story, understand her skill set, and are bringing that skill set into the university to work with students on her story, that real life experience of 10 years within a social enterprise. And I think that's the perfect answer for me on how academia and business can work together, regardless whether it's corporate, partnership, social enterprise, solopreneur, start, whatever it may be, whatever model it is, or whatever business setup. I think the universities across the UK and indeed the world need to do more of that, bringing the right people in that have the right experience now to share and inspire the future. And I think there's definitely still a disconnect between the business community and academia around the importance and significance of theory. And I think people in business that don't have academic experience worry about theory or the lack of not knowing theory, but actually they deliver it each day. It's just that they don't know the hierarchy, or they don't know the 10-step process, or who founded some of this stuff. But I think there's always opportunities for businesses in the academic world to work more collaboratively. And I would say now more than ever, it is the chance for businesses and entrepreneurs to be engaging with a university, some local university at some level, to see where there's a bit of collaboration or a bit of work. But I think getting back to finding my point is Alice's point. I think it's great to hear that she's getting an opportunity to go in and tell her story to future potential social enterprise startups. We can make a massive contribution and deliver a great purpose to whoever they want to do that.
Oh, thank you very much, Frank. And I think the word I picked on was now. It's time to do it now, not later. Now, we need to collaborate now. So we have a very interesting question for Alice. And someone would like to know what it was like living with Joe and Pete in the same house.
Yeah, I saw that question come up and I was like, can I reply somewhere? But I'm still getting used to the software. It was a really good question. And it was honestly like generally awesome, I would say. Yeah, so basically like had this really tiny flat. Well, it was sort of over 2 floors, but it was very tiny. And I kind of said, like, you guys have the living room, which was upstairs, actually. The living room and kitchen were upstairs. And I had the bedroom and bathroom downstairs. And I was kind of like, you guys have that. That's where you sleep, and I'll be in the bedroom and bathroom. And we were at work all the time. So, you know, it was very long days. So it was really just coming back and sleeping and watching some Netflix and stuff like that. But it wasn't without its challenges. Like, there were, like, yeah, I don't know how much to tell you really, but like, just to be perfectly honest about it, like there were times that like sex workers were brought back, and I would, and not for sex even, but just because they're in the community on the streets with each other, they all come back for a bit of a party, and it's like 4 a.m. and there's drinking and partying going on upstairs. And I'm like the old lady downstairs with the broom, like, you keep it down up there. But again, like it was such a culture shock. It was such a full immersion into a different, to a subculture that I didn't realize existed. I didn't realize that people on the streets, you know, had these kind of circles, and that they existed within a completely different zeitgeist than us, you know, and not to make a them and us thing out of it. But I think the problem with society is that we think that everyone has lives like we do. And really what happens is people like Pete and Joe experience life in a completely different way, and they end up having completely different aspirations. So living with them and getting close to them and being able to get closer to their world was the biggest education of my entire life, in terms of understanding that where we maybe would say, oh, I aspire to have a great job and have positive relationships and be a good person out in the world, Pete and Joe have been taught that they must survive and that they should take what they can get for themselves because no one else is going to give it, that they can't rely on people, that love is made up and for people unlike them. And I got this education and understanding that there's a whole subculture going on that I was completely unaware of that need to be addressed and brought into the system. So it was the education of a lifetime, but also it meant that Joe and I particularly struck up quite a bond, and he'll, you know, be in my life in some extent forever. So yeah, I wanted to share a quote when Johnny and Frank were talking about young people and social enterprise and being able to change the world. So I'm sorry that I was looking, if anyone could tell, I was doing a quick little search on my phone because I knew that I wanted to share this. It's from Pearl S. Buck, who was an activist, and she says, "The young do not know enough to be prudent, and therefore they attempt the impossible and achieve it generation after generation." And I just thought that was relevant to bring to the space.
Wow, we'll probably have to pin that to the event. Very interesting. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Alice. So we have a very complex question for Alan, right? And I think this is a potential student because of the way the question is worded. The person says that I am an aspiring entrepreneur, but I also want to get an education. Why should I come to UWS?
How long have I got to answer? I guess probably should come because what our students tell us is that they feel that we're like them. They like the fact that I think we've walked in the same path that they're starting on. We talk a lot in enterprise education about war stories, you know, how you kind of contextualize the theory, which can be quite dry, with practical stories. And the best way we find to do that is bringing people like Alice to tell the story and inspire others. But also we bring in people like Frank, not as guest speakers, but as paid lecturers, because the best way to sort of embed business and education is to bring in people from industry and help the students work out what they need to know, because the students are experts in themselves a lot of the time. And all we're really doing, I think, is providing lots and lots of opportunities like this to open their minds to the options that are there for them. What we've been doing to answer the question specifically over the last particularly the last year and a half is working really, really closely with other departments of the university to make sure everything's a bit more joined up, so that yes, you've got the curricular learning stuff, which is really important, but then you've also got what we call co-curricular stuff going on, like competitions, guest talks, like this, the Student Business Society, to give you as many sort of opportunities to learn about your own skills, what you have and what you need to develop. And remember, not everybody's interested in starting their own business. A lot of people are going to go out and work for organisations they don't own, but they're still going to be, we hope, the sort of place where new ideas come to the front. They find better ways of working. So, I'm not selling anything here, but I think the people that come to us know why they come to us. If they're interested in starting a business, they're interested in getting an education, then this is the place to come.
Thank you very much, Alan. And in line with what Alan has said, there's a lot of support that UWS provides its students in different ways. So it's something you can research. The information is available. Thank you very much again, Alan. So we have another question for you, John, and this has to do with money, right? So
I'll lean forward here, yeah.
This person wants to know, how do you fund student innovation? especially because there's always a funding gap when students are looking to start up companies?
Yeah, that's a really good one. It's been our experience that many of our students come up with fantastic ideas, and we work with them to develop sort of business plans and plans to help the business really make an impact. But there can be a real stumbling block right at the end, which is that they've got to eat. A wee bit like Alice was saying there, she had no money, and that's a real obstacle, because when you're embarking on a business, my goodness, does it not take every waking hour and all your enthusiasm and energy and all the time you have? And yet, if you haven't got some funding, then what are you going to do? How are you going to eat? So there is a problem with that, and it's something that we at UWS are very much trying to address. We've had some success in asking some of the community around UWS to come up with some funding that we can provide to our students. Not huge amounts, but I would say £10,000-15,000 is not insignificant if we're going to help somebody get started. And that's the other sort of dimensions of what we're looking at. We also work hard to connect into the investment community as well, so that where people go beyond that and show the opportunity for growth, we can connect them to more serious investment. But lots of entrepreneurs worry a little bit about giving up some of their business to somebody who comes in with some cash. A lot of my career was in North America, and the culture there is the right one as far as I'm concerned, which is a smaller amount of something really big is much better than owning the whole amount of something that's not going anywhere. So never be afraid to seek out funding, and we'll help and we'll connect. But it's really important, and there are gaps all over the ecosystem in Scotland that really need to be addressed in that area.
Oh, thank you very much, Johnny. And I think that is also one of the reasons you should probably come to UWS. Johnny has confirmed that there's some sort of funding available. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So, Frank, we have another question for you. Very interesting. I was reading it and I thought, how would Frank address this? But I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts. And the participant wants to know, where do leaders develop?
Where do leaders develop? Well, I think yes. I've got to say they've got to come and develop at University of West of Scotland, haven't they? Where do leaders develop? So I would say that certainly the organisations that I'm very fortunate to support and have been supporting during what has been a really difficult time for every industry the past couple of years, and we're still going through that. Let's not hide away the fact that the obstacles are still in front of us. I would say certainly the past couple of years that leaders have had to develop whilst exercising the challenges they face themselves. They have looked at, maybe local support potentially, but a lot of things were happening via phone calls, via Zoom. Nothing was happening physical. There wasn't big conferences or events to go to and develop. So I think people reverted to more traditional versions of development. But certainly in the organisation that I was working with, it was more about developing during these challenges. So there was so many challenges and things that leaders were having to navigate their way through during the past couple of years that they had to basically find their way through that. I would like to say that certainly now people are starting to look at personal development in a different way, getting back out, looking at opportunities to grow and develop in areas that they feel they need to navigate, again, the challenges ahead. I mean, I think in business, we all know on here, and I'm sure anyone watching will appreciate, if they work in a business, challenges in business are just the norm. Every day there's something to be discussed, but I suppose never more so than of late. I mean, certainly from a leader's development, I would imagine a lot of guys look at podcasts, listen to podcasts, watch stuff on YouTube, potentially are members of organisations aligned or associated with their industry. But I mean, I read a Harvard Business Review a year and a bit back. I think it was from about 2019. It was speaking about how 60 to 70% of leaders don't do anything formal in terms of personal development. They see the job at hand as being how they develop through conversations with their team, navigating strategy, and trying to basically deliver better value for customers. But I think we would all agree on here, regardless how you are developing yourself as a leader, you have to develop. You have to have that growth mindset that I'm sure Alice champions, and see the obstacles that are in the way as opportunities for growth and potential. It doesn't always feel that way when there's an obstacle, let's be honest. You know, you can easily go, oh, but there's always a solution. And my final point would be being an associate lecturer at the University of West of Scotland. A couple of the classes that I've lectured in the past, one is the whole creating enterprise and creating business models, and innovation and creativity is at the heart of that. And I think what the university does really well is encourages right from the start students to adopt that. Look, create and innovate is something that's so pertinent in the business world. So they don't need to wait to year 4 to get that. Quite quickly, they're getting how significant being innovative, being creative and learning and being a conscious leader of what needs to change is right at the forefront of the university champions, certainly under the enterprise department, which is an area that I focus on. So yeah, anyone watching and listening needs to develop, sign up for the University of West of Scotland and you may see my or Alan's face, or even Yemi's face soon.
Thank you very much, Frank. Thank you very much, Frank. Leadership is actually a very complex construct, but leadership development doesn't stop, it's continuous, and there are several ways that you can develop yourself. Now, we have a final question as we draw a close, but this is for everyone, and we'll be expecting all the panelists to respond, right? So the question is, considering students or recent graduates entering the post-pandemic marketplace, what words of encouragement do you have for them? What should they consider in developing professionally and entrepreneurially? So this is an open floor now.
I can go. I feel like in so many ways, the pandemic is obviously awful, and it's completely changed the way that society functions. I mean, look at us, right? Like, we never would have done this a couple of years ago. But at the same time, I think it's also just been this incredible opportunity to change the way that people look at things. So, you know, everybody seems to be quitting their jobs because people have been in lockdown and been really thinking about what's important to me. Do I really want to give the rest of my life all of this time to this organization if they aren't respecting me or feeling that I have something to contribute or allowing me to sort of bring my best self to work? And as a result, all of these new businesses are popping up. I wish I remembered the statistic, but I read something a few weeks ago, an article that was saying that there's like the rate of businesses being registered on Companies House throughout lockdown is skyrocketing because people are trying to take control of their own lives now. So yes, we can all go, you know, and be entrepreneurs and start businesses. But as I think it was Frank was saying, or was it Johnny, one of you was saying about, you know, not everybody wants to go and start a business. Some people want to go and get a great job for a company whose values are on the line and deliver every day something that makes them feel fulfilled and provides a service or a product that is meaningful and have a, you know, a good quality of life. Some people want to collect the paycheck and feel good about their jobs. And we need those people. So I would say that the good thing about this post-pandemic world is that businesses are looking at things a bit different, and there is a bit of a recruitment crisis. You know, we've had Brexit, all of the Europeans have gone home. We've now had the lockdown. Businesses are changing shape quite drastically. I think this is an opportunity to hold businesses accountable and to say, you know, in your interviews when they ask you, and do you have any questions? To ask, yeah, like, what values do you have? What do you guys stand for? I'm not talking about what product you sell or what service you sell, but why do you exist outside of that? And challenging them to raise their bar, because I love when I speak to businesses that are like, how do we get the graduates? Like, they all want to work for more than the paycheck now. How are we going to do that? And they're trying to figure it out. So I would say hold them accountable to that. But if you are sure of your purpose, and your cause or your desire to be a person of integrity, and you bring that to the interview space or to the entrepreneurial space of setting up your own business, I think you will inspire people to want to work with you. So I would say, you know, this is a time as Frank was saying, the time is now. People are reevaluating how society operates, how business works, how businesses should be set up. So I would say bring all of that. Don't be scared by this values-led world that we're moving into. I think business has served us really well for the last 3,000 years while it's evolved alongside us. And it's getting to the point that people are wondering what else the point is. And I think don't be scared of that. Lean into that and bring that into your workspace, because that is what businesses are desperate to figure out, and they need people that can come in and help them figure that out. Business owners are a bit scared, I think, at the moment, a bit intimidated by the graduates almost that want to have this great job that's all got purpose and meaning. But if I was just going to really quickly also say, the one thing I would say is that one thing that can get misconstrued by younger generations is that they think they're going to go and get a job where they're going to feel like there's a meaning and a purpose every day. And I think it's understanding that as long as you're part of an organism that's doing something, it's about realizing that that is happening, and that you can't always be the one that's going to be like patted on the shoulder and told, you really changed the world today. It's about work. And that's been my experience at Social Bite, is like hard work is what has achieved the amazing social impact. I'll shut up.
Thank you very much, Alice. So we'd just like to hear from you, Johnny.
I'm going to agree violently with what Alice just said, but maybe pick up something, just an aspect of it, which is, you said a couple of times there, Alice, but don't be scared, don't be afraid. When we're looking at the future, whether it's the future of something entrepreneurial or in employment or in our personal lives as well, we can often be a little afraid of uncertainty, of not really being sure what's going to happen or what's there for us. If I've learned anything, it's that if you work hard, if you follow your values, then there's nothing to be afraid of. Everything won't work out perfectly. I'm not going to promise that putting your fear into abeyance is going to turn your life into the best possible life that you could ever have. But don't let fear get in the way or stop you taking bold steps forward, because that's when you start shaping yourself and making yourself into where you'll end up and where you'll go, and it'll take you in directions you weren't sure you'd get to. So don't be afraid.
Thank you very much, Johnny. Thank you so much. It's actually been a very rewarding experience for me, and I'm sure to all our attendees online. So we would have to draw a close to it because of the time constraints, and it's my pleasure to invite Dr. Murray to give the closing remarks.
Thanks, Jamie. So firstly, thanks to Alice for sharing a story with us. I'm sure everybody found it inspiring, and what she's achieved through trying to tackle some of the really, really big social problems has been, I think, a lesson for all of us. Also equally impressed by our enterprising skills. What we're trying to do at the university is help develop entrepreneurial graduates who are going to add value to either the businesses they start themselves or the organisations which employ them. And we do this for trying to develop the sort of skills and mindset that we see so obviously displayed in successful entrepreneurs like Alice. So we're trying to help them not only develop this idea that they can create opportunities for themselves and their own friends and family, but also that through using their skills like problem solving, creativity, innovation, leadership, teamwork and skills, they can actually add value to society as a whole. And what we're conscious of is that it's very easy working at a university to become detached from the real world, and events like this give us a much needed reminder when we hear from real entrepreneurs and the challenges that they face, and they're making a real difference, that the purpose of the university is essentially to serve the community around it. And that's never been more needed than in times like this. Social enterprise is more important than it's ever been, and it offers a real opportunity through the mechanism of business to make a real difference to people's lives. And we saw real evidence of that in Alice's video and throughout the discussion. So thanks again, Alice, and thanks to Yemi for making this event happen. It took a lot of work behind the scenes to pull it off, and I hope it'll be the first of many. And also thanks to Theo and Emma behind the scenes for managing the technical aspects today. And lastly, a big thanks to everybody in the audience who joined us, and I hope you'll join us again for future events. I know Yemi's been putting the finishing touches to the next event, and we'll post details of that as soon as they're confirmed on all the university's social media channels. So thanks again, and back to you, Yemi.
Thank you, everyone, and see you in April. Bye-bye.